What's up, everyone? Phil here, and yeah, over a month after its release, I finally had a chance to get out to the movie theater and see Star Wars The Force Awakens. It seriously seemed like everything conspired against me over the past month and a half to not allow me to go see this movie, whether it was being busy with the holidays or my work or then getting sick. But I finally had the opportunity to go out to the theater, check it out, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you because a lot of people have been asking me over the past month, what did I think of the movie? And I hadn't seen it yet. So here goes. Now, one thing I think I should preface this is that, number one, I want to let you know there's going to be spoilers. There's no way that I could give my actual reactions about things in the movie without revealing the things in the movie I'm reacting to. So if you have not seen Star Wars The Force Awakens yet, massive spoiler alert, I strongly recommend you don't watch this reactions video until you actually do see the movie for yourself. I am a huge fan of Star Wars. I actually was way into it during those re-releases in the 90s. I had the action figures I was collecting. I read the comic books. And really, when this movie was announced that they were going to be rebooting the Star Wars series, I was excited because it's not a prequel. I don't like prequels. I don't like hearing about extended backstory of the characters. I just want to hear about what's going on in the future. So knowing this is a direct sequel, a continuation of the series was great, and it's one of the main things that attracted me to want to see the movie. Now, that being said, one of the main criticisms that everyone's giving Star Wars The Force Awakens is that in a lot of ways, it doesn't feel like a new movie or a continuation. It has so many parallels to Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, and I have to agree. So, spoiler alert, they begin here. A person who's stranded on a desert planet seemingly out of place. The person mysteriously later on gets force powers. There's the Resistance versus some evil organization, whether they're called the Empire in the old movies or in this one they're called the First Order. The First Order's trying to take over the galaxy. They're building some kind of a giant super weapon. It's the Resistance's job to try to get in there and stop that super weapon and blow it up. There's a showdown between good and evil, whether it's, space combat or whatever. It pretty much is the same movie in all ways, shapes, and purposes. And in fact, some of the characters in this movie who make a return appearance are actually in the exact same roles that they were in the original A New Hope film, which is kind of like, whoa. So is it really a continuation? Is it a reboot? It's kind of both. And in all honesty, for a series where the original trilogy happened so long ago, maybe this was the right route to go. I still kind of remain reserved in saying I think they could have been a little bit more original. There was a lot of original stuff in the movie, but I could definitely see the parallel and the criticism that it's way too similar to A New Hope. Alright, so let's talk about the casting. You have Rey, who is this mysterious girl. She's stranded on the desert planet of Jakku. You don't know how she got there. She's a scavenger trying to make it on her own. She ends up having an interaction with a guy named Finn, who you later on find out is actually a renegade stormtrooper who for some reason broke out of the mind controlling conditioning that they basically condition all stormtroopers to have. By this chance meeting and running in with a android called BB-8, they're now tasked with saving the universe. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? So now they have to get this android off of this planet of Jakku and try to get him to the Resistance. And there's interactions with some returning characters such as Han Solo, Chewbacca. Later on in the movie, you end up running into some old favorites like Princess Leia. And of course, there's actually some really cool return appearances from Admiral Akbar in a cameo appearance and a few other people who you may recognize were in the original Star Wars trilogy who kind of make a return here, even though maybe they don't have major roles. It's cool to see them returning in some kind of a respect. Now, some of the things that I really liked about The Force Awakens were the returns and the Easter egg references and the things about the original trilogy. Seeing Han Solo come back in a major starring role, being a really strong character, and having a lot of the same character quirks and quips and traits that he had in the original trilogy is awesome. Let's face it, Harrison Ford is much older now, but he does a great job of jumping back into the role of Han Solo, in my opinion. Chewbacca's there and now actually has a little bit more of a supporting role and even has some comedic kind of reactions and lines that make him a little bit more funny than he was in the original trilogy, even though he certainly had that in the original Star Wars trilogy as well. Princess Leia making her return, even though, wow, does Carrie Fisher look a lot freaking different now that she's much older. But it was cool to see all these people return to their roles and have a major role in the movie. Alright, so that's the hero side, but let's talk a little bit about the villains. Kylo Ren kind of taking up the mantle of Darth Vader in this movie, even wears a mask that alters his voice. He has pretty insane force powers, and it was pretty cool to see that this guy had, like, mastery of the powers. He was able to stop photon laser blasts, which you've never seen before in the previous Star Wars movies, with his mind, which is pretty damned insane and crazy. And the fact that he had this really cool lightsaber, which a lot of people have criticized, wouldn't that lightsaber chop your own arm off and shit when you're swinging it? I really don't give a shit about that. I think that it was cool and it was something neat and different. And the character is pretty complex. I'm not going to spoil too much about him, but I liked the fact that it ties in with the previous movies and that there's this interim stuff that's happened in between. Pretty neat, and I like that. Now, one thing that I really didn't like about the villains is the big overarching villain of the movie, whose name is Snoke. What were they thinking with this guy? Let's face it. Number one, the name, Snoke. Wow, that really sounds scary to me. What does it even mean? It's obviously some generic name they just made up. It sounds like Snape from freaking Harry Potter, so it's like drawing parallels between other movie series, like why the hell did they choose that name? And it's hilarious because he looks kind of like Voldemort. It looks like Voldemort got thrown with French fry acid on, or French fry oil on his face, and that's really what the character looks like. The fact that the character doesn't really have any development in the movie. You have no idea who he is. He only shows up for a few scenes. He seems to be the big bad guy, but you don't know anything about him, is kind of annoying. If one thing you could say in A New Hope, Darth Vader was the bad guy. And yes, there were hints to the Emperor and interactions, but Darth Vader was the main villain. In this one, it's definitely Snoke who's controlling everything behind the scenes, but you know absolutely nothing about him because they never elaborate. It's like they're saving too much maybe for the future movies. I don't know, but it is what it is. I don't really like that character, and hopefully they make it better in the future installments. Now, one thing that people have been talking about that, again, this is going to be a spoiler if you didn't see the movie, Kylo Ren apparently has the mummified head of Darth Vader, and he talks to it, which is pretty creepy. And you're like, does he think he's actually interacting with Darth Vader? Is he interacting with the ghost of Darth Vader? Because if you remember correctly, back in the original Star Wars trilogy, Vader turns at the end of Return of the Jedi and becomes a good guy, and at the end of the movie, he's able to show up with the ghosts of the other Jedi in the Ewok village during the big celebration scene at the climax of the movie. So how would he be talking to Darth Vader about the dark side if Vader already was redeemed at the end of Return of the Jedi? It's kind of a confusing scene, and it almost leads me to believe there's something else going on behind the scenes. That's a cool twist, and I'm interested to see how that's going to pan out in the future movies. So what did I like about The Force Awakens? I certainly liked the returning cast. I liked the fact that unlike the prequel trilogy, you could tell the people who made this movie were huge fans of the original trilogy and treated it with respect and didn't let their egos get to them. I hate to say it, George Lucas got such a big head after having so many popular movies in the 70s and 80s that he thought he could do no wrong. He went back and edited his original Star Wars trilogy with utter crap that no one wanted. He made a prequel trilogy that was pretty bad, and everyone was like, what happened to this guy and his creative genius? Of course, everything he said, oh, it's you just don't like it, but it's what I had envisioned originally and blah, blah, blah. And he's full of shit. I mean, the bottom line is, George Lucas became an egotistical prick. The people who worked on this movie did not. You can tell that they're fans of the movie. And when you watch it, if you're a fan of the original Star Wars trilogy, you're going to love the references. You're going to love that they actually seem to take it a little more seriously and take it into the modern era in a lot of ways. You know, the phasers now, some of them have explosions and stuff and modern effects that really add to the movie. And I think that it makes it a better movie overall now that it's taken into the modern era. So I did actually like the new characters. I think that Finn and Rey make a cool duo. BB-8, I mean, it's a droid. You can't really understand what the flip it's saying half the time, and it's making jokes, you don't even know what's going on. You know, it's okay, but really the human characters, in my opinion, were the focus of the movie. I like them. I think that there's going to be tons more development, hopefully, in the later films, because at this point, I really feel like I need more of them to understand these characters and their motivations. You know, why did Finn rebel against the First Order? What allowed him to break through the mind control conditioning? There's got to be a story behind that, right? And Rey, who is she? Where does she tie into everything? That's going to be interesting to find out in the future movies as well. Why the hell does she have force powers? Who could she be? Is she maybe a relative of another Jedi that we know? Who knows? I guess we're going to find out in the future, and I definitely like those new characters. And now it's time for my criticisms of the movie, of which I have many, okay? Number one, I've got to tell you this, and everyone knows this. I don't like CGI. I think that CGI in the past decade has been used over excessively. You've got movies that basically the entire movie is based off of it. and I just don't like it, especially when 9 times out of 10 the CGI that's put into these movies looks bad. Star Wars The Force Awakens has a mix of good CGI for things such as the space combat scenes with the X-Wings and the TIE fighters, looks absolutely awesome. But then compare that to the scene, there's a scene on a freighter with these weird tentacle aliens with teeth. It's terrible. Like, the whole scene is just crappy CGI, and you're like, why is this in the movie? They couldn't do some kind of a creature effect here that would make sense. They couldn't have written this scene so it didn't need excessive CGI, and I really did not like those scenes simply because of that. It just looks so fake. Oh no, one of the main characters gets caught by the tentacles, is getting pulled around. You could tell 100% that it's fake. Keep the crappy excessive CGI out of this. You don't need it. The original trilogy had no CGI and still holds up to be one of the best looking trilogies of sci-fi ever made. You don't need it. J.J. Abrams, relax your ass with that stuff. Now, another thing that I didn't like that is kind of a spoiler, but kind of not. The Millennium Falcon is in this movie. In fact, it's the main ship of the movie. 99% of the movie, when they're in space, they're inside of the Millennium Falcon. And it's just silly because if you watch the original trilogy of Star Wars movies, the Millennium Falcon is kind of the running joke. It's supposed to be a crappy ship that Han Solo kind of manages to operate to the point where it could be a ship that could actually save the good guys in that movie series. And it's funny, you know how I compare the Millennium Falcon? It's like, you know how your dad might have a car? He's the only person who can drive it. It's a junker. It's a piece of shit. But he somehow finds a way. He has the magic touch to get it to start when no one else can get it to start. He's the one who can actually get it to work. And that's really what the Millennium Falcon was. If you watch the original trilogy of Star Wars movies, even Han Solo had issues flying the thing. A lot of the times it wouldn't start. So how is it that throughout this entire movie, the Millennium Falcon is this amazing ship, has almost no technical difficulties, even though it's been on a fucking desert planet, bereft, and it's decrepit, and no one's done maintenance to it in years? It can easily just fly off and take away, and is ready to save the galaxy again. I hated it. It was super cliche, and they easily could have just put a different ship in there and had the plot progress a different way. I did not like what they did with that. Yeah, I do have to bring up the fact that this movie had so many parallels to the original A New Hope movie, and I understand that. And I think some people will like that, some people won't. I really think they could have done things that were a lot more original because, unfortunately, because it's so similar to A New Hope, I was predicting halfway through the movie the shit that would happen. And I knew, I kind of knew what was coming. Like, you know there's going to be some big dramatic turn near the end of the film, just like there was at the end of A New Hope. You know that there's stuff coming because it's so similar to the first movie. And I feel if they had gone with a completely original plot line instead of almost doing this as a redo, that it would have been a better film. And overall, I think that criticism does stand up, and people who say it's too similar are kind of on the right page there. My final point of criticism is about the ending. And of course, if I tell you the ending, I've spoiled the whole movie, so I won't. But I'll tell you this. The ending is a huge cliffhanger. It's almost a letdown, even though for some people they'll be like, yes, this is great. Other people are going to be like, that's it? You're actually ending here? And I kind of agree that the ending could have been done better. The one thing that's not the same as A New Hope. Remember the end of A New Hope? Everyone, oh, we destroyed the Death Star. Everyone gets medals. That's the end of the movie, because they didn't know at that point if it was going to be successful and end up being a trilogy, so they had a definitive ending, and that was good. In this movie, well, we know it's going to be a hugely successful trilogy, so let's just have a really crappy cliffhanger ending with no resolution, and let's see what happens. And I don't like that. You should have at least had some kind of a resolution. I hate it in video games. I hate it in movies. Give me a resolution in my movies so that at least you can say, okay, this is a definitive end. If I never see the next two, at least I know how this one ended. And in this case, it's open-ended, and it's annoying in that regard. So ultimately, Star Wars The Force Awakens for me is a mixed bag. Certainly, I like the film way more than the prequel trilogy. That is 100% true. Do I really like it as much as the originals? I mean, the nostalgia factor is so strong that I don't know if I'll ever say that a movie will stand up to the original Star Wars movies, no matter how good it actually is. I could definitely tell you that the people who worked on this movie love the original trilogy. They really wanted to almost make it as a love letter to those original films. And I like the fact there's returning characters, there's new characters, it's a good mix. The villain seems interesting, at least at this point. And I don't know what's going to happen in the future films, and that's a good thing. It leaves you uncertain and hoping for more. But at the same time, I really think that there were so many cliche things and so many parallels drawn to the original movie that it kind of didn't reach its maximum potential. Because of that, I'm hoping with the next two movies in this trilogy that they're so much different and a departure from the original trilogy that we're not constantly drawing parallels the entire time and predicting what's going to happen with the line of movies. In all honesty, I'll be honest with everyone, I know a little bit more about the Star Wars lore than most, because when the original trilogy was re-released in the 90s, I started reading comic books that were the Star Wars expanded universe, and I actually know some of the answers behind the stuff that's going to happen in the future movies just because I know the backstory. So for me, it's almost a little bit spoiled. I certainly won't reveal any of that in that video, but I think it has potential to be pretty good if they do it right. And if anything, this first movie was a good sign that they know what they're doing. They're really treating this series with a lot of attention and a lot of care, and they want to do well. So far, for Star Wars The Force Awakens, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. J.J. Abrams did a great idea, a good job, and he had some great ideas. I just hope that he doesn't have the future movies be so similar to the original trilogy that we can get a departure and have some variety. Alright, so that is it with my reactions to Star Wars The Force Awakens. What did you think of the movie? Leave your comments on the video and let me know. Do you think it was too similar to the original trilogy? What did you think about the returning actors? Give me your thoughts and let's share. Let's have a little bit of a discussion, alright? Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I'll see you later for more of my reactions. Peace out.